And what if I told you that ancient people never sat still to meditate like you and I do today? They didn't close their eyes and wait for something to happen. They didn't count their breaths or repeat mantras. What they did was wilder, more real, more physical, and far more powerful. They possessed a knowledge of the body that we lack today. They didn't talk about chakras or the mind. They moved a bone. Yes, a single bone, but not just any bone. One that, when activated, opened a door that is now completely sealed. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was just another mystical story, until I tried it and felt something move inside me that I'd never felt before. It was as if my whole body was remembering something old, as if a memory had awakened that wasn't mine. And from that moment on, I understood why they didn't have to just sit and wait for silence. Because the silence wasn't outside. It was there, right where everything begins, in the most forgotten center of your spine. Today, I'll show you what I saw and how you, too, can move that bone. But first, let me explain where all this comes from. For he was not born in books, but in caves, in rituals, in dances, and in bodies that knew things we have forgotten. I will never forget the first time someone spoke to me about the sacred. It wasn't in a temple or an anatomy class. She was an elderly woman with suntanned skin who lived in the mountains. One of those people who doesn't need many words to make you feel like you're on the trail of something important. He told me, "You search above, but what awakens is below. Everything begins at the base." I didn't understand, or didn't want to, until he showed me a hand-drawn image on a piece of old leather. It wasn't a chakra. It wasn't an esoteric symbol. It was a bone that looked like a small folded wing, with something carved into it, a spiral. I stared at it silently, and she said, "This bone is the door. If you don't move it, you'll never get in." Much later, I found out that this bone is called the sacrum. And yes, the name is no coincidence. It comes from the Latin, sacred sacrum. The ancients didn't know it by studying it, but by feeling it. In tribal dances, in deep breaths, in ritual walks through the jungle. The sacrum isn't just a part of your spine, it's its foundation. This foundation is located exactly where your most primal energy begins and has a shape that no other bone in the body replicates. 5 vertebrae are fused together like a shield in the exact center of your pelvis, like a bowl collecting life. Did you know that the Egyptians believed it was the first bone to be reincarnated after death? The Greeks called it the throne of the soul, and that in some shamanic rituals, the body was not touched, but only chanted around the sacrum. This bone was at the core of secret practices for centuries, but somewhere along the way we forgot about it. They've erased it. We're trading it for mental visualizations, for exercises that only scratch the surface. We've separated ourselves from the deep body, and with that, a door has closed. But the body doesn't forget. Just wait. And when you learn to move that bone not with force, but with intention, something begins to awaken within you. It's as if a dormant current begins to rise, to beat, to whisper to you things that don't come from your head. One night, alone on the floor, without music, without guidance, just breathing, barely moving my pelvis, letting my sacrum relax, I felt a wave of heat rise up my back. It wasn't pleasure, it wasn't pain. It was as if a floodgate was opening that had been closed before I was born. You don't have to understand everything now. Simply knowing that this bone exists and that it was called sacred for a reason, because it contains something, a pulse, a key, a physical memory that no thought can replace. And that key will move with you. It's not about moving your body like an exercise routine. It's not dancing, it's not stretching. It's something else. It's like moving something you can't see, but which awakens when you do it right. That was the first mistake I made. I thought it was just a physical matter, tilting the hips, rocking the pelvis, performing a series of movements as if someone without a soul were repeating a step. And nothing happened until I understood what she, the woman of the mountains, had told me without words. This movement is not performed with the body, but with the body and with rooted awareness, because the sacrum is activated not with force, but with presence. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting on the floor, not on a chair, not on a yoga cushion purchased online, but directly on the earth with no music, no noise, no guidance, just you and gravity. Your breathing slows, You begin to feel your weight. You feel your sitting bones touching the floor, you feel the base of your spine, and right there, the sacrum. You don't have to understand the shape, you just have to feel it. That bone that doesn't move like the others, but vibrates, and that you can easily evoke. Now let your pelvis rock back and forth a little. It's not an exaggerated bottle. It's more like a subtle conversation with your base, as if you were asking, "Are you there?" And the body, after so many years of silence, responds with a sigh. The answer doesn't come from the mind, but from deep within. And it's not something we anxiously seek, but something that comes when we surrender to the movement. In ancient cultures, this gesture was part of everything. Before bed, before marriage, before lovemaking, before prayer, it was a way to tune into life. I've seen stone carvings depicting human figures with curved spines, as if summoning something from the center of the ground. And I felt firsthand how this small, seemingly insignificant movement can release an energy I didn't know was trapped inside. Some call it a snake, others an inner fire. I'd rather not give it a name, because there's no word that truly describes it. What I can tell you is this. When you begin to move your sacrum with intention and respect, something changes within you. You feel your entire body reorganize, as if you were remembering a language you've always spoken but forgotten over the years. I began doing it silently, for a few minutes every morning, with my eyes closed, sitting on the cold floor, and each time I finished, something inside me felt more solid, more present, more alive. Don't expect fireworks. This isn't a show. It's subtle, it's real, it's yours. You don't have to be in shape. You don't have to be flexible. You just have to be willing to move the way ancient people moved. Your feet touch the earth. Your body listens to its story. And the sacred finally awakens after centuries of silence. Because the actual portal was never in the sky, but always in your pelvis, and it only opens when you open yourself. There's a moment. It doesn't always come the first time or even the second time, but if you keep going, if you surrender to the movement without expecting anything, that moment will come. It's not announced with lights or visions. It's not like in a movie. It's simpler and therefore more real. I experienced it one night while searching for nothing. I was tired, the world weighing heavily on me. I just wanted to breathe and let it all out, so I sat down on the floor, as I had done so many times. I gently tilted my body downward and began to move my sacrum, as if I were stroking it from within. It was a small gesture, but something inside me began to open. First it was heat, then a trembling, but not in the muscles. It was as if a gentle vibration ran from below through the marrow, as if a current that had always been there was waiting for this movement to rise. And when it reached the chest, everything stopped. Time stood still. I can't put into words what I felt next, but I'll try. It was as if my body was here, but my consciousness was one step ahead. Everything remained the same. The room, the air, the night. But my perception expanded, as if the boundaries of reality were softening, and a new structure appeared between the visible and the invisible, a kind of veil that slowly lifted, and then I understood. You don't have to leave your body to enter another reality. You just have to enter the body you've always ignored. The deep body, the vibrational body, the pons body, and the sacrum form the threshold. If someone had told me this years ago, I would have smiled politely, but now I was experiencing it. And the most surprising thing wasn't what they felt, but what they remembered. Yes, I remembered, because this wasn't new, but something old, as if my soul recognized the path and said, "You've been here before." I understood why ancient people didn't have to remain silent for hours. They didn't expect the mind to be still. They knew that when the body consciously moves, it opens the door. And this door doesn't convey a physical location, but rather a different perception. A finer, more vivid reality in which everything has sacred weight, in which the air seems to sing, in which one is not observing but being. After that night, nothing was the same again. Not because I had visions, not because I saw lights or heard voices, but because I discovered that there is a space within me to which I can always return. A place beyond thought, beyond language, that opens only when I move this bone with truth. And that's when I understood the true meaning of movement. It's not an exercise, it's not therapy, it's an offering. Every time you consciously move your sacrum, you're telling your body, I'm ready to move. And the body, which has kept this secret for generations, lets you pass. Only if you do it from the center. Only if you surrender to the inner rhythm. Only if you listen more than you impose yourself. And when you enter, you know that you are not alone, that many have walked this path before you, and that all have left an invisible trail that you now follow in the silence that feels more alive than any noise. This is the other reality, not a magical place where everything is perfect, but a state where you and your body are in harmony and your soul finally finds peace. After experiencing something like that, you expect everything to change immediately, for life to become clearer, for problems to dissolve, for something out there to transform because you've changed inside. But what I discovered is simpler and rawer. The world out there remains the same. The news, the reports, the unanswered questions. Nothing moves except you. And that you, who are returning, who have felt the body like an open temple, can no longer walk as before. Because when you pass through that door and truly feel the sacred beating inside you like an ancient drum, you can no longer ignore it. You can no longer sit with your eyes closed, meditating, waiting for something to fall from the sky. You can no longer pretend that everything takes place in the mind, in sublime spirituality, or in the pretty ideas that adorn books, because now you know that there is a root, and that this root is alive and moving. That was the true transformation. Not what I saw, not what I felt, but the return. Back to routine, but with firmer feet. Talk to others again, but also listen to your body's signals. Return to the silence and realize it was no longer emptiness, but a pulsation. An inner rhythm that was always there, but that I never wanted to listen to. And when you hear it, everything changes, not because the world is different, but because you now know there is another way of being, a more animalistic, older, more real way. You see, no one will teach you this in school, in yoga class, or in online courses that promise enlightenment in 7 steps. Because it's not taught, it's remembered. And this remembering doesn't come from the mind. It comes from below, from the earth, from the bone, the sacred bone that you've carried with you since birth. The bone that holds everything else together. The bone that was there before you learned to speak. There's something deeply liberating about that. Knowing that you don't need any more theories or any more paths. You just need to return to yourself, to your body, to the point where the mental and the physical are no longer separate. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I don't come with proof or formulas. I'm simply sharing with you what I've experienced. Because when you feel it, even if it's just a spark, you know this isn't just another story. It's a call to awaken what lies dormant within you, to stop escaping upward and instead delve deeper, and let go of the idea that there's something out there you have to find, because what you're looking for is already vibrating within you. It's in this bone, in this gesture, in this moment of surrender. The rest is practice, not practice to achieve something, but to remember it. And if any of this has resonated with you, if anything in your body has responded with even the smallest echo, then I invite you to do one thing only. Move slowly and with intention, with your soul, and let your body show you the way, because perhaps the ancients never left written instructions, knowing that the true teaching was already written in your bones. They just had to listen again. There was a moment, some time after everything I had experienced, when I asked myself a question that changed everything. What if the body were not just a tool, but a text? Not a text read with the eyes or the mind, but with presence. A code written not with ink, but with memory. Not printed on paper, but in flesh, bone, blood. Movement. This thought didn't come from a book, but from the deep silence after practicing. A strange feeling, as if something was watching me from within, as if my body knew I was finally ready to listen. And then I began to remember all the fragments. The sacrum vibrates like a drum. The breath rises up the spine like a warm breeze. The gentle pressure of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. The beating of the chest when all is still. All these were not mere experiences. They were signs, pages, pieces of a sacred scripture that I carried within myself. And I understood that there is no more complete map than the body, that there is no more honest temple and no more sincere teacher. The ancients knew this. That's why they danced without choreography. They breathed as if each exhalation were a prayer. They didn't lie on the ground to rest, but to be read by it. They didn't believe in the separation between the physical and the divine, for in their world, the body was divine. It was the altar, it was the language of the gods. And we've forgotten it, we've domesticated it, we've locked it away in names, diagnoses, and labels. We teach it to be still, to feel nothing, to obey. But that's not what the body is. The body is wild, it's wise. It's a vibrating code, a map where every joint, every organ, and every line contains a story. And do you know what's most impressive about it? This code isn't universal. It's unique. Every body has its own way of speaking, its own sacred handwriting, and therefore there is no one-size-fits-all method. You have your own body alphabet. You just have to memorize it. Once, while walking aimlessly, I felt my feet tread differently. It wasn't the ground that had changed, but me. Every step felt like a word to me, every breath like a page, every shudder like a line written in real time. And I told myself, I read my body, and my body reads me. Since then, everything has changed. I no longer stand in front of the mirror to judge. I stopped to look at the code and ask it what it wanted today, what part of its story it wanted to reveal. There are days when your pelvis wants to move as if it were dancing with fire, others when your ribcage wants to open effortlessly, and still others when it just wants to rest. And that's okay, too, because reading your body isn't about forcing it to speak. It's about staying in your presence long enough for it to speak to you when it's ready. And when that happens, when you truly listen, your body begins to teach you things no teacher can. Where does your fear reside? Where does your strength slumber? Where have you hidden your voice? And how can I return to you without having to flee the world? This is true art. Not enlightenment, not transcendence, but embodiment. Embody the sacred. Inhabit the code. Return to yourself like someone returning home after years of exile. And then every gesture becomes a ritual, every breath, a song, every movement, a word in the language the ancients spoke, without having to utter it. This language still lives within you, in your bones, in your sacrum, in your unique way of moving and pausing. You just have to open it like a forgotten book that finally finds eyes that want to read it. There comes a time when you need no more words, no more ideas, not even more questions, but only a gesture. A single gesture that comes not from ego or the desire to achieve something, but from that inner place where everything you've heard, felt, and remembered takes shape. I didn't know what kind of gesture that was. At first, I thought it had something to do with stretching, tensing, or relaxing. I tried many things. Breathing, postures, contractions, but nothing could ignite the codex. Until one night, more out of fatigue than wisdom, I gave up the search. I lay on the floor without a pillow, my back fully supported, and my legs bent, as if something inside me was trying to curl up. I planted the soles of my feet and felt my sacrum touch the earth. And then something happened. It wasn't a flash, it wasn't a vision, it was a small impulse, an intention born not in the head but in the gut. I slowly drew my navel inward, as if breathing into my spine, and at the same time slightly lifted the center of my pelvis, as if an invisible thread were pulling it toward the sky. The gesture was so subtle that no one would have noticed it from the outside, but inside, it was as if a spark had been ignited deep within. A warm, dense, almost liquid energy. A chill ran down my spine, as if this gesture had been the lost key. That was it, this gesture, this small inner movement, that was the switch. It wasn't spectacular, it wasn't difficult. It was sacred because it wasn't the gesture itself, but the place where I did it, out of devotion, out of listening, out of that space where you no longer try to maintain control, but let your body speak to you. In that moment, I understood that all the symbols, all the ancient writings depicting spirals, columns, wings, or serpents, spoke of this, of the awakening that occurs when the body is finally touched from within. The sacrum became a bowl, the belly a glowing coal, and the spine a channel connecting not only bones but also realities. Afterward, I repeated this gesture many times, not as a technique, but as a wordless prayer. Each time, something different was revealed. Sometimes a memory surfaced, sometimes a causeless cry, sometimes simply an immense silence that wasn't heavy but enveloping. It was as if my body was saying, "Thank you for coming back," and I understood something else. This gesture isn't a means to go somewhere else. It's not an escape route, but a way of being, of dwelling, of igniting from within the book that has always been closed. You don't have to do the same thing. Your body will find its gesture because every code has its key, and yours is waiting. All you have to do is stay within yourself long enough for the key to appear. And when it does, you'll know it wasn't a discovery, but a return to the bone, to the root, to the flame that always burned, but which you had forgotten to look at. When the body has moved, when the bone has spoken, when the energy has risen through the spine like an ancient tongue of fire, nothing remains but silence. But no, an empty silence. It's a different kind of silence, one that weighs differently on your chest, one that stays with you even as the world outside continues to rage. And this is where the real practice begins. Not in the gesture, not in the intense sensation, but in the response, in how you walk through your house, how you react when someone interrupts you, how you breathe amidst the chaos, how you hold your gaze without trying to control anything. The hardest thing isn't turning on the energy, but living with it without turning it off. Because after every awakening, big or small, there's always a test, not a test from outside, but from within. The body wants to know if you really heard it, if that dance with the sacrum was a fleeting visit or the beginning of a new agreement. And this agreement isn't grandiose. It doesn't require vows or ceremonies, just a little daily, deep attention. It's easy to forget that. Simple as that. The world is full of glittering distractions, full of screens promising more answers, full of voices proclaiming formulas, recipes, and systems. And the simplest thing to do is to go back to sleep, to switch off, to move through inertia, to breathe without presence, to sit in silence but with the body switched off. For this reason, this chapter is not a conclusion. It's a reminder that you don't need to repeat the entire ritual every day, and that you don't need to rekindle the fire to keep the light burning. Sometimes it's enough to close your eyes for a moment and return your attention to the base, to the bone, to the center of gravity you now recognize as yours, and let the descending silence envelop everything, not as a pause, but as an integration. Because when your body starts talking to you, you can no longer ignore it. You'll feel it in your back if you speak with fear. You'll feel it in your chest if you don't say what you feel. You'll feel it in your legs if you turn away from your truth. And that feeling is the guide. Ancient people didn't need manuals. They had their bodies, and the body was their map, their prayer, and their mirror. You still have it, even if you feel disconnected, even if you haven't experienced anything spectacular on this journey. It doesn't matter, because the true transformation is the one that remains when there's no spectacle, the one that remains when you close the video and return to your life. Maybe you go to bed tonight and don't practice at all. Just breathe, just feel the weight of your body, and perhaps, without you realizing it, your sacrum will vibrate again, your memory will reopen, your code will ignite, and when that happens, don't explain it, don't put it into words, just stay there. One more second, one more silence. And allow that silence to shape you, not to change who you are, but to remind you that you have always been whole, that you didn't come into this world to achieve something, but to inhabit it fully, from the bone, from the gesture, from yourself.